We don't want politics in gaming. This is a phrase you've likely heard or maybe even championed yourself at some point since the start of Gamergate back in 2014. Regardless of how you feel about this statement, those who have bandied about these types of sentiments are primarily concerned with censorship in gaming, overt political messaging, and the influence of ideologues on the industry. Well, apparently all that stuff's out the window, because Gamergate 3.0 is all about people who pretend to be Christian imposing conservative ideology on gaming, at least according to Melonie Mac. Now, who is Melonie Mac? Well, I'm definitely not an expert. I can't watch her content, mostly because her voice is insanely shrill.
Yes! Why is it the male feminist, bro? She's got they made her tall. They made her insufferable.
However, from what I do know, Melonie is one of the myriad of right-wing grifters who've chosen to attach themselves to popular culture war topics like video games and superhero movies. Despite her sizable following, Melonie's content rarely makes waves or draws big numbers, which is understandable as it mostly consists of lazy, unscripted reactions to news articles. But she seems to have built her following primarily by appearing as the token lady on larger, panel-style live shows like Friday Night Tights, where she contributes next to nothing. If you've seen one of these shows, you know exactly the type of guest I'm talking about. They basically sit in silence on a 4-hour live stream, chiming in a couple sentences every 40 minutes or so. And God, is that chime in the worst 10 seconds of the show. Now, this is by no means me saying that all the female creators in this space are like this. Personally, I'm a big fan of Baggage Claim, whose contributions are consistently well thought out and thought-provoking. Anyways, late last year, Melonie got herself into a little hot water when she chimed in on a Twitter thread discussing Korean live service looter shooter, The First Descendant. The thread in question was discussing a screen grab from a dancing minigame featuring a scantily clad character model. Having racked up quite a few culture war victories and lead up to Trump's re-election, the more religious side of the faction decided it was time to do some moral policing of their own. With the Dread Pirate Roberts saying, "So many claim to care about morals and the future generations, and not even giving an inch of progress to devs who push woke ideology or whatever else. But then they'll turn around and tell young men and women to support titles that throw this stuff in your face. This is why I say we need real adults with real ambitions/aspirations and a mature outlook on the future to lead the charge in the industry. People who have their priorities straight and their arousal in check." Melonie Mac then decided it was time for her to chime in with her own little nugget of wisdom. Gamer coomers are the same as gamer alphabet people. Most of them aren't actually gamers. They just want video games to be a medium to incorporate their perversion. Shockingly, Melonie's Tipper Gore act didn't go over too well. Apparently, a lot of gamers don't appreciate being morally browbeaten by a 40-year-old divorcee with worse eyeliner than Boxy. I'm not really interested in getting too caught in the weeds with the ensuing Twitter spat, but Smash JT did a pretty decent video covering the drama in more detail, which I will link in the description below. Now, the backlash to this whole situation caused Melonie to lose some followers on Twitter and some subscribers on YouTube. But she's a relatively big channel. Obviously, the right course of action would be to take the L and move on, right? Wrong. More than a month later, Melonie decided to resurrect the drama and expose it to an even larger audience in this absolutely dog shit 30-minute video I'm about to discuss. But before I get into it, there are a few things I would like to preface. 1. Melonie is a very outspoken Christian. She has the zeal of a new convert and cannot go 10 minutes without reminding you. I personally am not a Christian, however many of my closest loved ones and business partners are. This is something I totally respect. If you're a Christian, I'm cool with it. But given Melonie's constant appeals to her faith, it is a topic I'm going to have to discuss, and I'll make every effort to do so in a respectful fashion. That being said, I'm kind of a head, so we'll see how this goes. 2. Melonie's videos are clearly unscripted, and this video in particular features a lot of meaningless yapping and reiterating of the same points. For that reason, I'm going to be chopping things up and addressing what I think is important or funny. If you want the full context and think you can sit through it, I'll be linking the full video in the description below. With all that out of the way, let's get into the video.
A little over a month ago, I got canceled from the anti-woke side, right? Canceled or cancel attempt. You know, it is what it is. I lost a lot of followers here on YouTube and on X.
Right off the bat, that's not what happened. People disagreeing with your bad Twitter take is not being canceled. And trying to play the victim and appeal to people's dislike of cancel culture on your fully monetized YouTube channel looks really goofy.
Because I said I do not want perversion in video games. And that includes that of the straight variety.
Really, Melonie? Is that all you said? Because it kind of seems like you were calling gamers who are skeptical of Christian morality pleas coomers, and disfavorably comparing them to the LGBTQ. By the way, her whole, I'm not like the other girls, I'm a homophobic badass, I'll say the F slur whenever I want, act is pretty rich, considering just a handful of years ago, she was very pro-LGBT. Now, either she's undergone a massive change in ideology at a bizarrely late stage in life, or this edgy Christian, I'm like Steven Crowder with a pussy act is just that, the grift of least resistance.
I am a Christian. Everything I do, everything I say, everything in my life is centered around Christ.
I love how Melonie has this pristine, unopened Bible just off screen as a prop so she can occasionally lift it to remind us she does indeed own one. But while we are on the topic of the Bible, I would like to take a moment to examine if everything Melonie does is in fact for Christ, or is in standing with biblical principles. Like, what about these thirst trap posts on Instagram? Are these all for Jesus? I get that you're at the gym in some of these, but doesn't this seem a little immodest? You couldn't hit the Stairmaster in a t-shirt? I don't know. I've seen a lot of guys at the gym, and they seem to be able to lift weights just fine without wearing a crop top. Now, while I'm sure these photos do wonders for your engagement, they kind of run the risk of leading your male fans into temptation. After all, according to Matthew 5:27 to 5:29, you have heard that it is said, do not commit adultery. But I tell you, anyone who looks at a woman to lust after her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better that you lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. This should be very concerning for you, Melonie. If all your followers gouge out their eyes, how are they going to see your thirst traps? What about all these tattoos, the chokers, the pound of makeup? Well, 1 Timothy 2:9 tells us, I also want the women to dress modestly, with decency and propriety, adorning themselves not with elaborate hairstyles, or gold, or pearls, or expensive clothes, but with good deeds, appropriate of a woman who professes to worship God. Now, obviously, I have tattoos. And personally, I have no moral qualms with a woman posting however much of her body she wants on social media. That being said, if you're popping off with takes like this,
that sin is not an identity. And LGBT is not an identity. It's not real. It is all sin that goes against God's design. So society has called this sin an identity to normalize it. Andrew Robb, thank you so much. 10 gifted kick subs. Thank you.
You'd better believe I'm holding you to a higher biblical standard. We're not doing this rules for thee, but not for me bullshit.
So I didn't make this channel 3 years ago to put my neck out there to get blacklisted from the video game industry so I can't even do mainstream work like I used to do. I didn't put myself in that position to call out the perversion with the queer ideology and this, that, and the other that has been infecting everything. I didn't put myself in that position just so I could turn around and push perversion just because it's straight. Not gonna happen.
I love how Melonie pretends she's done us all this big favor and made some grand sacrifice. Like the anti-woke movement would be nowhere if it weren't for Melonie Mac's 3 years of service on the front line reading Kotaku articles. And what's this about some big mainstream career? Apparently Melonie has done some stuff for Geoff Keighley and some corporate G4 clones, but I have a hard time believing that stuff was going anywhere. I'm sorry, but the silent film era has ended, and Melonie does not have the voice for live broadcasts.
And I have the same stance on queers as I do these gooners. Is that, hey, yes, what you're doing is shameful. Yes, I think this stuff is shameful, and I don't want it in my entertainment because it's shameful and it's hurting society. It's disgusting and it's perverted. No, I don't want it. Do I think that people participating in these activities are losers? Yes. But you know what? It doesn't mean you have to always be a loser. Have I ever been a loser?
Yes, you're being a loser right now. I don't know how you thought it was a good idea to turn a cope sesh about being blown out on Twitter into the longest video you've made in 6 months, but you're doing it. Also, there is no my entertainment. You don't have ownership over any form of entertainment. These movements you've latched yourself onto are about consumer advocacy, preventing censorship, and opposing DEI mandates. It's not about non-developers worming their way into the industry and tinkering around with the content to better fit their moral framework. That's literally what Sweet Baby Inc. does. The games market is a very simple proposition, as are all markets. Developers produce a game, and consumers either choose to buy the game or not. Interestingly enough, your videos, which are also a product, operate in much the same fashion. If people choose to unfollow you, you're not being canceled. They just don't want the product.
Don't kink shame. Don't shame people's sexualities. They made up an entire concept of sexuality that isn't real. God created woman for man. That's it. There's no other sexuality. Anything else is a perversion of God's creation as per the Bible. You know what else is perversion of God's creation is when you're substituting, if you're, I'm going to use a male as an example, if you're substituting a wife for a pixels on a screen, that's perverted. Your sexual gratification is supposed to come from your wife.
Okay, Melonie, if you feel so qualified to judge other people's lifestyle, here's a question. Where's your husband? Where's your children? You are a 40-year-old woman attempting to preach this trad lifestyle while clinging on by your fingertips to this 20-year-old e-girl aesthetic. Do you not see the cognitive dissonance? Do you not see why people might not take you seriously? If this message was coming from a nun or the modest mother of a nuclear family, I might buy it. But how anyone could look at your social media presence and see anything other than a vapid hedonist adoring the shallowest trappings of piety is beyond me. This has to be the best grift going. You get to claim moral superiority without making any personal sacrifice. Now, I'm not going to cover the rest of Melonie's video. As I said earlier, this is the most yapping she's done in half a year, and there's basically no content. However, I do think it's worth mentioning that this new position is a total about-face from her previous content. All this comes off the back of vehemently defending both Lollipop Chainsaw and Stellar Blade, two games that feature equivalent sex appeal to the first Descendant. What I would like to talk about is the fate of Melonie's simps, namely aging bathroom masturbator Razörfist. For those not in the know, Razörfist is an Arizona-based content creator who loves leather jackets, wears sunglasses inside, and films most of his videos in black and white. He's also the proud owner of a thesaurus, a fact he will remind you of more frequently than Melonie reminds you she owns a Bible. As an avowed metalhead and libertarian, he's frequently spoken about the importance of free speech and creative expression. But for whatever reason, Mr. Fist felt compelled to needlessly throw his hat in with the dim-witted authoritarian right lady, and as a result was blown the fuck out on his own podcast, Side Scrollers.
Razor,
Godspeed.
why does everybody hate you?
Oh, just sipping on Spurglard tears. Don't worry about it.
Everybody hates you since the last time you've been on. It's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know why so many people are so passionate about defending sexy ladies when the only freaking venereal disease they've ever contracted is carpal tunnel. But hey, we'll go on. It's fine.
Well, as the show that encourages sexy lady mentality,
Great.
Stace Gibbons says, for Goonergate topic, part 1, the whole thing seems very Puritan and censorious, and how is this different from the woke pushing their ideology on people who want to play what they want to play?
Yeah. I mean, pretty simply, I never called for censorship. In 5 days of an absolute typhoon of tism, nobody has yet produced a screenshot where I called for censorship. Blow it out your ass.
He came back, says, part 2, instead of Yahtzee, sexist, or bigot, it's Gooner, center, loser. And like it or not, there is a market for such games and actual corn games. So much, even Valve started allowing them. I've always said the market will always decide. When it comes to this stuff. Tamamo, sorry, I butchered your name. He says, I don't care for the drama, but calling gamers who like stuff you don't like losers isn't the best way to cultivate discussion and get your point across. Just in case, insert dev or journalist here.
Yeah, there's way more creative names to call them.
Vagabondo, my man, Devon came in and says, why does Stellar Blade get a pass and not First Descendant is the main criticism any Any other take is deflection to the main hypocrisy. No one thinks Razor trying to ban anything, and saying such is deflection.
Yeah, no one. Just my mentions full of people claiming otherwise.
Yeah, I will say that, yes, I've seen a lot of people claiming that you are
absolutely
censorship. Yeah, I have seen that quite a bit for sure.
Yeah.
But do you have any thoughts on the other side of that? The idea of like why the first defendant is different than first descendant is different.
I don't like either of them, so it's irrelevant to me. I don't care.
Yeah. Ulysses says it's not the Christian we hate the hypocrisy by Melonie Mac, and she spurged. Nothing more, nothing less. Never go full simping, Razor.
Sure. Yeah, I expressed the same opinion months before she did, but so we'll go with simping, you clown.
Nethel King says hard to disagree on Razor. We take issue with Melonie's conduct and hypocrisy, characterizing it as filling diapers and smearing seems dishonest to me.
Are there any that don't come from e-drama dogshit merchants? Any?
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's see if we can find some of those labs. Just actual
Yeah.
That was pretty rough. But Razörfist, he's a badass metal guy, a gun-toting conservative who tells it like it is. Clearly some slight ribbing from his audience isn't that big of a deal. He could just shake it off and come back reinvigorated on the next episode, right? Well, apparently not, because he quit.
To still be featured on Side Scrollers. Well, so Razor's going to step away from the show. It's a decision that he made, and he says he's ramping up stuff to work on Volume 2 of Ghost of the Badlands and Volume 3 of his book series, of his comic and everything, and Volume 3 of his book series. So he's going to step away, and he's been meaning to step away from shows like this, like us, and I guess he's going to step away from FNT and things like that as well. So to focus on his own personal stuff. So Razor made that decision, and we are going to honor it.
Guys, this is crazy. I can't believe it. The leather jacket, the sunglasses, the tough talk. It was all an act. Who could have possibly seen this coming? To conclude, I don't think these are the type of people you want in your movement. Even if you're not into scantily clad women in video games, I think the style of mocking and morally browbeating your audience is just lame and pushes people away from your cause. At the end of the day, people are adults and they want the freedom to engage with whatever media they like. Choosing to crash out over some random Korean live service game was a really weird move, but I'm glad it happened because I think Melonie is a total hack and I'm glad people aren't letting it slide.